The Chaos Elemental grind is in full swing for me, and I've been spending every opportunity I can grinding out KC here. The pet chance from here is 1 in 2500 with a threshold of 500. The threshold number means that every time we get that many kills, the numerator of the pet chance is increased by 1. So at 500, the pet chance becomes 2 in 2500. This means the longer we go without getting the pet, we get an increased chance towards receiving it. This isn't the worst pet chance in the game by any means, and since it's pretty quick to kill this boss, it's just a numbers game in my mind. Spooning the pet would be nice, but I'm also ready to spend a good while here. I had a little bit of luck and ended up getting our combat Partyhat shard. This puts us at 4 out of 8 shards needed for our fancy hat. Every once in a while, I'd be graced by the presence of the lovely wilderness banker, allowing me to have longer trips. Normally, I have to run all the way to the major arena for banking, so I always enjoyed seeing this guy, even if he did give me a mild heart attack every time he popped in out of nowhere. And after a long while, I finally ran into my first PKer. It was a very scary moment, and my other account did get killed, but luckily enough, I was able to get the hardcore out to safety. Even if I hadn't, our combat level trick would have kept us safe since the PKer was too high of a level to attack me anyways. I waited a little bit before logging back in and then escorted my account out of the wilderness. We're doing good so far and have 348 KC, and we're making good progress towards our first threshold. And just to keep things interesting, a little while later we ran into yet another PKer. Again, our strategy has kept us safe and the hardcore got out in time. After doing this boss for a while, I eventually developed a bit of a strategy for it. The spot I liked to stand in is right next to this rock here. The main reason I decided on here is 1, because it keeps me in loot range of the boss, but the better reason is because it protects me from someone coming in from the west. I positioned my other account to the southeast of the Chaos Elemental, so that way it's the closest to the obelisk to the east, since I felt like that was a very common place for people to come from. With this setup, the only place I could be taken off guard from is the north, which seemed to be pretty uncommon anyways. Not too much later, I had a random iron come in from the south and scared me with an ooga booga. He ran off right away, and because of him sending that silly message, I just figured he was some guy running through trying to scare me as he went by. But then like a minute later, an actual PKer ended up showing up. I got away fast enough that I didn't end up catching the person on this screen, other than one of his projectiles as I was running away. So I don't know for sure if the first guy was scouting, but it was oddly convenient. Away from the Chaos Elemental, I'd been continuing to grind away at Croesus, and he's continued to bless us with amazing RNG. We first ended up getting a Scripture of Bic, putting us at 4 drops and 136 KC. This book is a really nice one to get since it helps us collect clue scrolls, which we will need plenty of later on. And just to prove how lucky I've been here, I went ahead and got another Scripture on the very next kill. What the fuck?
Enjoy this victory while it lasts.
Literally back-to-back scriptures? That is ridiculous, dude. Really now? Literally back-to-back scriptures seems pretty good to me. After all that fun, I continued to grind away at the Chaos Elemental. And not too long into it, I ran into yet another scout and PKer shortly after. I was starting to get a bit spooked with how many PKers I'd run into at this point, and I decided to try out using the foreign language servers. These servers are something not everyone is aware of, but the way you access them is by changing your client's language settings by clicking on the setting cog while the launcher is loading. Depending on the language you choose, there will be a couple of worlds available to choose from. These worlds are often pretty unpopulated, so they're a decent place to do wilderness content. The main downside is that the entire game will be in the language you chose, so if you only speak English, it can be a bit tough to navigate. After a bit more grinding, I received one of my first weird drops from this boss, a set of antipoisons. This boss has a really strange drop table, and there are some things like this one that are actually quite rare, even though they're not really helpful at all. The drop rate for this one in particular is 70 in 28,800, so actually quite rare. While not helpful, I thought it would be fun to note stuff like this. And again, soon after, I ended up running into yet another PKer. This was also a pretty close one because it seems like he was actually able to try and attack me, but I'd pressed the lobby button right before his attack actually landed. After this one, I called it a day since my heart could only take so much trauma. This to me was a sign that our combat level was starting to get a bit too high. I hadn't decided for sure yet, but I chose to get the process started for doing a defense level reset. This would drop my combat level by a relatively decent amount. Once per account, you can go to Nastaroth and Lumbridge to have certain levels on your account reset, with defense being one of the options. The big downside to this is that any quests we've done that required a defense level or awarded defense XP will need to be redone. You do have to wait a full real-time week before you can actually reset your level, so I figured I'd get it going now just in case I do end up deciding to do it. But of course, I couldn't have a moment of peace, and about half an hour into my next run, I met yet another PKer. This time he came from the east, so I spotted him first with my other account, and I was able to get away quite easily. And then about 10 minutes later, I ran into another possible PKer. They were coming from the safes area wearing a demonic skull, but also had a yak and some gear while using Soul Split. I have no idea if this was a PKer or not, but I was out of there anyways just to be safe. At this point on the account, my life basically revolved around doing Croesus dailies and grinding the Chaos Elemental. And just because I love getting drops so much, I got my next Croesus drop with a pair of Cryptbloom Gloves. No way, man! Why do I keep getting drops? Seriously? What the heck, dude? That's actually absurd. We're now only 142 kills in with 6 drops total, 5 of which are uniques. Just wild. Since I'd done a decent amount of Croesus now, my hunter level was starting to get to a nice point, with it in the mid-70s, and it was now time to start doing my own rot. This actually went really well, and our first kill with no help from others came in at 7 minutes. Plus, for all of our hard work, we were rewarded with the Croesus Pet at 167 KC. Sadly, I wasn't streaming at the time, so there's no reaction, but I was honestly beyond words with the absolutely absurd luck on display. This is also the first boss pet on the account, and I was super excited to finally start our boss pet tab in the bank. One down, many more to go. Back at the Chaos Elemental grind, I had a bit more weird luck and got another Antipoisons Drop. I also ended up having some actual good luck here and received a corrupted Statius Platebody. So the Chaos Elemental log is a weird one since you do need all of the Revenant drops for the log, but the actual chance of getting any of these drops from here is very rare. This drop won't actually help us out in any functional way, so it's just a nice early drop towards the full log here. And as usual, I ran into a couple more PKers, but I was able to get away from both of them rather quickly and no harm was done. We'd passed over 700 KC at this point, so the numbers were really getting up there. This also means we've passed the first threshold and the pet is more likely now. I had a less scary interaction with a newer player who was just interested in exploring the area. I ran away on the hardcore, but I actually hung out and tried chatting a bit with them using Google Translate. It was a much more blessed experience than I was used to in the wilderness. A little while later, and I actually ended up getting a second log drop with some Zuriel Robe bottoms. Now this is actually a pretty cool drop since we can eventually use these for a nice leg switch far in the future when we're doing Telos. Since accuracy was still an issue here, I had the not so brilliant idea of getting the Maniacal Aura to use at the Chaos Elemental. Now this does seem like a good idea, but the reason it's not is because unbeknownst to me, you can't actually use the Zerker auras in the wilderness. It's still a great aura to own either way, but I did feel a bit silly after trying to turn it on. After dodging yet another player, I took a break and decided to come back later. On my way back from banking during a run, I noticed that the web near the wilderness lever had been cut, which means that someone had come through there recently. I took this opportunity to preemptively lobby on the hardcore and go scout the area. It all seemed fine, so I brought the hardcore over, and almost immediately, another player popped out to attack the Chaos Elemental. After getting the hardcore out of there, it actually ended up being yet another harmless player, this time only here to do a few Chaos Elemental kills for a Reaper. I let him do his thing and then got back to my grind once he was finished. I spent a long time continuing to grind the boss after that without seeing anyone. I did end up spying another scouter at one point, but I made my way out of there in time. By the end of this trip, I'd passed 1,000 kills, putting us on our second threshold. The pet chance is even greater now, and hopefully we can get it soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a comment telling me your favorite part. You can also catch me live over on Twitch occasionally, and it would mean the world to me if you drop me a follow over there as well. I also have a friends chatting game that a bunch of us hang out in under my previous account's name, Expired Bree. Anyone's welcome to join. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one.